A warm welcome. This update is mostly about the United States. Now, if you've just watched the previous video in England, you probably saw we had this graph here, and we saw that cases are dropping and hospitalizations are just starting to drop in the UK. Therefore, deaths will follow after the lag. So the reductions in cases comes first, then the reduction in hospitalizations, then there is a reduction in deaths. That's what's happening in the UK. But in the United States, there's no doubt in my mind, unfortunately, that cases are going up. So this is the graph for the United States. So cases are going up now. Hospitalizations, which are already high, will go higher. And then deaths will inevitably follow because they are baked in to the number of cases. So it's really quite concerning at the moment. Now, just to put some official figures on this, this is the data from the US. Now, that downturn there is probably largely due to delayed reporting due to the Thanksgiving holiday period. So that's artifactual there, I think. Now, the reason that this is so concerning is when we look at US hospitalizations. So that was the US hospitalizations at the peak of 18th of April. Now we see they are much higher. And this data is already somewhat out of, well, it is well out of date, more than 2 weeks. That data is from the 14th of November. That's this is live from the website, so this is all we've got. And that number will now be much higher than that artifactual downturn there. And the other thing that's slightly concerning is here, we are seeing a few more cases in the younger age range. Well, increasing all through, but even in children there and in young adults, we're seeing some increase in cases in the US. Now, the situation in the UK is different. The hospitalizations in the UK have not reached the height of the first wave yet, whereas in the United States they've already exceeded the height of the first wave, which is a very uncomfortable situation. So we see the trends there, CDC trends, US hospitalization trends. Now, Thanksgiving was a week ago, so not a week ago yet, it was on the 26th of November. A week after that's going to be the 2nd of December. And many people in the United States, of course, were remarkably responsible. The majority of people in the States were remarkably responsible about Thanksgiving and the celebrations at that time of year and the Thanksgiving. But a sizable minority weren't. We know that from official data. Therefore, there will be an increase in cases that'll start to be evident on the 2nd of December in a few days' time. I'm afraid that this is, in a kind of way, baked in to the behaviour that we saw last week. So that's unfortunately going to happen. I do hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I will be, because it's already, the behaviour and the transmission has probably already taken place. Now, lots of headlines about the number of cases in the United States being 100 million. What is the truth about that? So let's look at that now. This comes from this paper, estimated incidence of COVID-19 illness and hospitalisation in the United States, February through to September 2020. Now, this is an accepted paper, so it's been peer-reviewed, and it's in Journal of Clinical Infectious Diseases. So this is a reputable peer-reviewed source. Now, what they did was they looked at laboratory-confirmed cases of COVID-19. So first of all, this disease is nationally notifiable, so people have to notify it when it's diagnosed, is what that's saying. So it has to be notified officially, and that's what we see in the official data. But reported case counts are recognised to be less than the true number. So of course we know this. We know that the actual number of infections is always higher than the official figures, because the testing that the official figures are based on is not going to pick up everyone, of course not. So what this study did was they wanted to estimate the cumulative incidence of SARS coronavirus 2 infections. The total number of infections is what they were trying to estimate. And they wanted to look at symptomatic illness and hospitalizations, as well as asymptomatic infections. In other words, the total number of people that have been infected in the United States was the aim to get this. So how did they do this? Laboratory confirmed case counts that were reported nationally were adjusted. So they adjusted for underdetection based on testing practices, inpatient and outpatient settings, and assay sensitivity. Assay is the test. Now, I've included the reference for this, so you can go and look at all that detail if you want. I've read it all, and it's like all these specialised things. Don't pretend to understand all of it, but it's a peer-reviewed paper, and what I did understand looked like pretty good technique. So I'm fairly confident that this is a well-conducted study, as indeed the peer reviewers are obviously confident it's a well-conducted study, which is more important. Now, the results: nationally reported cases, February the 27th to the 30th of September 2020. Now, this surprised me. They only detected 1 out of every 2.5 hospitalizations. Now, it surprised me that hospitals weren't detecting. If you'd asked me, I would have expected hospitals to detect all the cases that came into them, but that wasn't the case. The study showing they're only detecting 1 out of every 2.5 hospitalised infections. Surprising. But that's what their results showed. 1 of every 7.1 non-hospitalised illnesses. That doesn't surprise me at all, because a lot of people have minimal symptomatic disease or disease which is never officially diagnosed. So the 7-to-1 ratio there wasn't really surprising. Anyway, applying these numbers along with data on the prevalence of asymptomatic infections from published systematic reviews, so they got all the best data they could, we estimate that there was 2.4 million infections in hospitalizations, way higher than the official, and 44.8 million symptomatic cases. And that's just reporting on symptomatic cases. So what this means, according to this data, as of the end of September, so 2 full months ago now, 2 full months ago, as of the end of September, they estimated there had been 53 million actual infections may have occurred in the US as of the end of September, from their official from their examination of the official data and their extrapolation from the official data. So that's of the end of September. But of course now we are at the end of November. So what has been going on since then? Anyway, before that, their conclusion was 1 in 8, or 13% of total SARS coronavirus 2 infections were recognised and reported through to the end of September. So a huge, only 1 in 8 constitute the official figures. Now, the official figures as of today, the 30th of November, just over 13 million officially diagnosed cases. Now, if we apply that multiplier, the times 8, that gives us over 100 million cases. Now, I don't think it is as high as this, because as time has gone on, because this was the end of September, so through October and November, testing has been further refined, and I think the quality of information is now better. So now I don't think 1 in 8 cases are being missed. How many cases are being? I don't think just 1 out of 8 cases are being caught. Rather, 7 out of 8 cases are being missed. I suspect that's no longer the case. What the number is, I don't know. Is it 1 in 5? Is it 1 in 6? Is it 1 in 7? Basically, we don't know. But if it was 1 in 8, and this is kind of the figure that the news outlets have got onto, if it was 1 in 8 cases that are being detected, 7 out of 8 cases were not being detected, that would mean that 105 million people in the United States have had SARS coronavirus 2 infection. That's where the official figure comes from. But because the testing has improved over the past couple of months, I suspect the real number is just under 100 million. But even so, you're talking about 30% of the population of the United States, according to this, have now been exposed to SARS coronavirus 2. Now, I don't think this affects the death data very much. So we know that the death data is about just over 250,000. Now, if we take that number there, 256,166, and compare that to the official cases, that gives us a case fatality ratio of 1.95%. In other words, of everyone officially diagnosed, 1.95% of those has died. That would be horrendously high, and we know from studies in many other places, thankfully, the death rate is really not that high. But if we take that as the number of infections, then that would give us an infection fatality rate of the actual number. If the actual number were 105 million, that would give us an infection fatality ratio of 0.25%. So 0.25%. In other words, for every 100 people that get the infection, of every 400 people that get the infection, one has died. Infection fatality rate of 0.25%. And this, the reason that I think this might be true, is this is roughly consistent with the figures that we're getting from the UK, where it's looking like 0.3 or so. There's not a definitive number, but that number doesn't look too far out, is basically what we are saying. So it's looking like about 30% of the population of the United States have already been exposed to this virus. Of course, that means about 70% of the population have not been exposed to the virus. And another way to look at this is if 30% have been exposed and that has caused 250,000 deaths, if this pandemic was to run its course, which is not going to because of vaccinations and restrictive measures, that would mean that we could basically times that number by 3. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. It is going to keep increasing, of course. Deaths can only keep increasing. But I think that shows us what would happen from a natural evolution. And the death rate, if all these increased cases happened at the same time quickly, because of this graphic here, hospitals will be unable to cope and people will be dying unnecessarily. So I don't think that's going to happen. I'm going to cross that out. I don't like the look of that. So I think what we're seeing is this infection fatality rate of 0.25%, and that kind of number of people probably have been infected. Could well be 100 million already. And well over 250,000 deaths. Now I think it's good just to remind ourselves of who is most at risk and the deaths that have been reported so far. So this is from the Centers for Disease Control. It just reminds us 8 out of 10 deaths in the United States have been in adults over the age of 65. And they even do a nice sort of graphic to illustrate that. That's their figures so far. This tells us quite clearly that people over 65 need to be taking extra care not to get the infection. And they've actually broken the figures down a bit further here. So you can look on the website and check this for yourself. But the 18 to 29-year-olds, they've taken those as the comparison group. So 30 to 39-year-olds, they're the hospitalizations, they're the deaths. So 30 to 39-year-olds, 4 times more likely to die than 18 to 29-year-olds. 40 to 49-year-olds, 10 times more likely to die. 50 to 64-year-olds, 30 times more likely to die. 65 to 74, 90 times. 75 to 84, 220 times more likely to die. And over 85-year-olds, 630 times more likely to die than what is actually a very low death rate, fortunately, in this younger age group. But still quite a stark reminder. So we haven't talked about comorbidities here, but we see the risk of death increasing massively with increasing age. And that is another very good reason why, unfortunately, we need to limit our contact with our older relatives at the time being, for the time being. So there we are. It looks like about a third of the population of the United States have already been exposed to this virus. I guess it's always a bit later than you think. Now, one of the things I've done is I've asked people to send in pictures of their kind of experience of the pandemic, just to try and just almost document this for purposes. I don't know why, really. Just seemed a good idea. So this is from. These are all from. Who are these? Who are these from? These are all from. I'm pretty sure these are all from Warren in Maryland. That's right. So these are all from Warren in Maryland. So Warren writes, here are some photos from Maryland, USA. Most places require masks and limit the number of customers. Nearly all restaurants in my areas have converted to takeout only or outdoor seating. This is the church. We'll come on to this one. And they've often installed a window or some other mechanism to separate the clerk from the customers. Some streets are closed to allow outdoor seating, which is good. For about 4 months, our church was online only, so we streamed the services on YouTube. And quite a nice looking technical system there, I must say. So this is good. So in this whole church building, now I do hope the building is well ventilated. I'm sure it would have been, because they're clearly being very cautious and responsible here. So we have one worshipper sitting in the front there, well distanced from one officiator, and there we have the music. Now the music here is probably the biggest risk, because it looks like they're singing. So ideally they will be further apart, because we know singing sheds a huge amount of virus. But basically all the worshippers at home watching on YouTube, which is good. And this has been the situation for 4 months now. So that's good to see. Online only, so we stream service on YouTube. We're now back to about 50% of the church attending. Well, okay, sounds high. We're having distance seating in the sanctuary. Our fellowship hall has a large screen television and spaced out seating, and we're converted our nursery into another viewing area with another large screen television, since we're not offering childcare. Okay, fair enough. During the summer, we've had a large screen outdoor and projected our services outside. So quite good measures being taken. Here's the shopping here. No shirt, no shoes, no mask, no service. Sounds quite reasonable to me. Okay, shortage of meat. Fair enough. Can eat lentils, protein. Well, this is quite good. So here's their techies obviously put this together. You can freeze frame that and enjoy the sophistication of their operation there. Oh, here we see the outdoor dining. Still not too cold. I mean, that lady's got bare arms, so it's difficult when it gets cold. Rising meat prices. Yeah, screen for the people to sell things, ringing the bell for attention. Good. Now, the only thing that's concerning me there, Warren, is the fact that people are back in the church now, 50% occupancy. Okay, you're practicing hygiene, you're practicing spacing, which is good. My question to you, in fact anyone in a similar situation, is are you practicing enough ventilation? The level of ventilation in that sort of thing would be absolutely crucial. So I'm somewhat concerned that the church is back to 50% given the prevalence in the United States, and I would just appeal to you to make sure that the ventilation is good. If that means telling people to wear lots of thermal vests before they come to church, then so be it. So be it. But I'm glad to see the restrictions that you've been taking there, which sounds good. One other picture here. This is again just people's experience of the pandemic. This is pristine in Delaware, and the empty tables are reserved for imaginary friends. So I thought that was quite a nice sentiment there. Okay, that's that update. Do remember, make those lines as shallow as you can in the States, and hopefully make those lines as shallow as you can, because they're increasing now, and hopefully convert them to this where they're going down. So remember, in the States, unfortunately, that is the position at the moment, and there will be a spike this week because of what happened last week. So, I mean, Dr. Fauci was on the news saying, look, he understands that this spike is going to be there. So what he's saying is take even more care than normal. Follow the rules even more stringently than normal. And, of course, that's something we would endorse wholeheartedly. Thank you for watching, of course, as always.